As you know, lionesses are the ones who are mainly responsible for getting food and prides. When they go hunting, they're well aware of the risks and understand that they can get certain injuries. After all, a dinner in the wild can cost you much more than eating in a restaurant. Usually, lionesses just end up with some cuts and other minor injuries. But there's one injury all lionesses are really scared of. This magnificent lioness was filmed in the Shamwari Game Reserve in South Africa. She's always been known to local rangers as the most formidable hunter in her pride. However, after a fight with a warthog, she damaged her eye, and it started looking like glass, hence the nickname Blue Eye. It had seemed that after the warthog's tusk hit you in the eye, one could lose it altogether, but experts say that it was just swollen and turned blue due to the veins rising to the surface, which is why it looks so weird. The lioness can't see anything with the injured eye, and yet it doesn't stop her from being a successful hunter, simply because she's too cool. Moreover, this lioness is also the matriarch of the pride who teaches the young how to hunt, though not everyone can do it. I have to admit the lioness was damn lucky because she was blind in only one eye, and this happened when she was already an adult. For big cats, vision is a guarantee of survival, and after losing it, animals face certain death. Unless, of course, someone helps them. For example, forest staff in India once saw a 5-year-old lion that sat in one place for a long time without taking any action. Watching him, the staff realized that the animal didn't react even when the prey was close. The lion was delivered to a medical center where an examination revealed the animal had cataracts in both eyes. In general, cataract surgery involves replacing the natural lens of the eye with a plastic one. Surgeries are routinely carried out on smaller animals, such as dogs. Seems like no one attempted to perform them on lions yet. It took a lot of research papers, expert counsel, and even examining an eye sample from another dead lion to operate on that lion from India. He's doing fine now. But where would the cataract come from? Turns out that getting it in the wild is not so difficult. One strong blow to the head with a hoof is enough. Knowing that lion prey often packs a powerful kick, it's even strange that we see so few lions with cataracts. Sometimes lion cubs are born already blind. Yes, there are different deviations, and some of them lead to blindness, and in this case, the cubs have no chance of survival. They don't even survive to adulthood. Meanwhile, a blow with a horn or a tusk in the eye is not the only serious danger lionesses can face while hunting. A very good example is the story of a lioness named Sienna from the Masai Mara Game Reserve. On April 4, 2014, she was wounded by a buffalo, and the horn pierced the flesh so deeply it almost ripped off the lioness's hind leg. The wound turned out to be serious, and in such severe cases, the employees of the reserves are trying to help the animal. But this requires extreme caution. The thing is, lions actually have a powerful regeneration, and they can cope with most wounds on their own. Human assistance is required only if the wound becomes infected, festers, or if the animal is too weak to heal it by itself. In the case of Sienna, there were other complications. The lioness had cubs that were completely dependent on her health state. Keep in mind, surgery involves anesthesia that affects everything, from the work of the heart to the production of milk. Also, a lioness is not a domestic cat after all. You can't just put a blanket on her to keep the stitches intact. However, Sienna's wound was healed and stitched up, and even when the lioness got rid of the stitches on her own, everything ended well. The lioness made a full recovery in just 4 months. And then she got injured again, in the same place. Well, this time the buffalo had nothing to do with it. Sienna had a fight with another lioness from her pride. Actually, this happens often. But Sienna still needed medical assistance again. Her wounds were cleaned and treated with antibiotics, antiseptic spray, and green clay, and stitched back where necessary. And yet the danger coming from buffaloes seems to me more dangerous than that from other lions. Because this is how the lion prey acts. It often moves in large groups, and even the most experienced lioness can't do anything against a herd of buffaloes. Remember that scene from The Lion King? Yes, there were wildebeest and a male lion, but you get the idea. This story is similar. A powerful, majestic predator ended up in the middle of the herd, and no survival instincts helped her. The poor lioness was tossed around as if she weighed just a couple of pounds. Perhaps the lioness tried to hunt, or maybe she just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. In the end, her body was left lying next to the water. Actually, buffaloes can hurt not only lionesses, but generally anyone who gets in their way. How about more specific injuries, like tail injuries? This is a really important part of the lion body. Although it seems like just a fun appendage, the lion's tail is used for balance and also as a means of signaling to each other during hunting parties. You know, it's kind of like sign language, but when you have paws, you have to come up with alternatives. Female lions also use their tail as a follow me signal for their cubs. Knowing all this, it's hardly surprising that a lioness without a tail is in trouble. It's more difficult for her to communicate with other lionesses, not to mention keeping her balance while jumping. And yet, lions are good enough at survival to handle even that sort of injury, and here's an example. There's a tailless female lion in the Sabi Sands Game Reserve. In December 2005, she fought several hyenas over prey. They were stronger, and they ripped off the tail of the lioness just above the base. All this could lead to infection and death if the lioness didn't bite the remaining stump off to stop the infection. This allowed the lioness to survive and recover, and at the same time become one of the most famous animals in the park. By the way, have you ever noticed the tails of leopards? They have a distinct white tip, which is needed so that the cubs can see exactly where their mother is going. After all, the leopards themselves have the perfect color for camouflage, and the white tip of the tail stands out amongst the tall grass, like a flag. Cubs can always find their way and won't get lost because wildlife is dangerous. Get distracted for a mere second and some lioness will attack you. As I mentioned in previous videos, this really happens. But aside from that, lionesses sometimes have to eat their own cubs. Not without a reason, of course. First, the body of the dead cub will decompose under the sun, and its smell will attract other predators. No one wants other predators to trespass over your area, so you have to get rid of the corpses somehow. Second, the lioness may kill her cubs if they're sick. Raising offspring, especially during the nursing stage, can take up many valuable resources. If there's a chance that the lion cub won't survive to adulthood, it's in the mother's interest to get rid of the unhealthy child and save her resources for the healthier ones. Sometimes a mother or someone in a pride doesn't even have to literally kill a cub. This is what happened to this poor cub. For some reason, his leg was injured. Scientists don't know exactly why this happened, but the pride started acting as if the lion cub was already dead. They ignore him. They wouldn't let him eat. I'm actually scared to imagine how difficult it is for a lioness who has to abandon her cub, dooming him to death. But she has to do this so that the rest of the cubs have a better chance of surviving. But back to the problems of lionesses. Sometimes they're killed by lions. What could they possibly be fighting about? Can't they just live happily and multiply? However, it's not that simple. When a male lion was introduced to the female at the Birmingham Zoo in Alabama, the keepers expected that these two would form a couple and then bear some cubs. Quite the usual things to expect, but instead of courtship, the lion attacked the lioness and seriously injured her. People, of course, intervened very quickly, protected the female, and yet her wounds turned out to be too grave. The lioness died soon after. Everyone was very frustrated. Just imagine. You want to get more lions, but now you have even fewer than before. Lionesses can also be banished from the pride. A lioness named Kali, who lives in the Serengeti National Park, had cubs from another lion who wasn't the head of her pride. That lion was deeply offended. Don't ask how he even found out. Maybe her pregnancy timing didn't add up? Whatever the case, Kali was banished from the pride and had to survive on her own. This is a real problem for someone who's used to hunting in a group. Even when Kali managed to kill the zebra, the lioness could not fend off the hyenas and vultures from the prey. Only after her exiled sister joined the lioness did they manage to get food and feed the cubs. But they still had to protect the cubs somehow. In the pride, the males do it while the females are busy hunting. But what would you do if there's no nanny around? Meanwhile, the savannah is full of lone lions who are waiting for the opportunity to attack the one who's weaker. In general, the life of an exiled lioness is no easier than that of an exiled lion. Such lionesses often starve, suffer injuries, and have a hard time even feeding themselves. Imagine the lioness is also quite old. An elderly lioness in South Luangwa National Park became so desperate, she decided to attack an elephant calf. He was alone, and had the lioness been in better shape, she could have handled him. But things didn't go as she planned. Even a very young elephant is much heavier than any lion. After a long battle, he simply crushed the lioness with his weight, and she was forced to retreat. The injuries inflicted by the elephant turned out to be fatal. The next day, the lioness was found dead. And then I started wondering. We often see how lions die. There are a bunch of documentaries painting quite a clear picture. But what happens to the lionesses? As if the film crews don't care too much about what happens to them. Though they really should, because the death of lionesses looks no less dramatic. If the female lion doesn't die fighting some other animal, you already realize there are quite a few possibilities here, at some point she feels she's growing weaker. Due to old injuries, sickness, or simply old age, the lioness loses her strength. She leaves the pride, loses interest in food, and then fades away in just a couple of days. Most often, it's a peaceful, calm death. But this doesn't make it any less sad. However, you may have noticed that lions rarely give up just like that. Even with the most serious injuries, they continue to live to the fullest, never slowing down for a second. They even hunt if they can. And there's a very simple reason for this. When you're the apex predator, showing any weakness is simply unacceptable. Even surviving to adulthood is already a victory not everyone can relish. So any wound is something like a proof of tenacity. Not a single wounded lion will sadly lie under a tree and wait for someone to take pity on him. These wildcats simply handle all problems the best they can. As long as they have enough food to survive, strong lion bodies will deal with any injury. Well, at least they'll try to do their best. See you later.